Morning, everyone. We brought a special guest on today to explain some of what he knows about this whole situation, and I'll let him introduce himself here in just a minute. Also, I have Lori Alexander on with me. How are you this morning, Lori?
I'm doing great. How are you this morning, Damien?
Man, I'm telling you, I have since I premiered that show. I have gotten a flood of information from people.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. Is they see that that you're on the right side of things, and they just start sending you the information. I have that happen to me all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
Then you have to go through and you have to vet it, and you have to take a look at it from a journalist perspective and decide which is accurate, or what their agenda is, and usually doesn't take long to figure out who's who on that. Take a look at it from a journalist perspective and decide which is accurate, what their agenda is, and it doesn't take long to figure out who's who on that. Take a look at it from a journalist perspective and decide which is accurate, what their agenda.
Your window open.
Oh,
it doesn't take long to figure out who's who on that.
Mute your.
Yeah. I see that. Yep, there we go. Much better.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and most of the information I've gotten so far, like I've gone and checked out a bunch of it, and it's good, solid information. I mean, I couldn't get any better.
Awesome. It's actually, it feels good to be vindicated after all of these months of being, made out to be the bad guys.
Right. And the fact that they struck my channel before I even had the chance to upload it. That was crazy.
But you won. You won the.
I won my dispute, and
you won the dispute. The video's back up, visible for everybody. And that just goes to prove a lot too. So.
Yep. So good morning, Michael. How are you today? Did we lose you? Hello.
How's it going?
Very well. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. Just putting together more paperwork and trying to share more information.
Well, we're gonna go. You can lead us today. This is your show today. So which direction would you like to head? First, go ahead and tell the audience who you are, and we can go from there.
My name is Michael C. School. My website is citizensactionnetworks.com. We've set up a website. It's not complete yet, but it's what we're doing is trying to build a self-help website for people that are having issues with their public servants not following their oaths of office and honoring the Constitution. So we've begun to put together a process. The process that people actually want to use is pro se, because right now everybody's directed to bar attorneys, and bar attorneys are required under federal law to register as foreign agents when they pass the bar exam. And there aren't many people that even know that. So we've been exposing that and showing people how to enforce FARA against bar attorneys that are committing fraud in our courts.
Very good. Very good.
So as this process began, it started out for me a couple years ago. I started a group called Prepare to Take America Back, and I started getting visits from the FBI. So I was asked to tone it down a little bit. So I switched to Citizens Action Network and just began studying Lawful time. And my first interaction in the Patriot movement was at the Bundy Ranch. And that's where the controlled opposition started coming out I've had conversations with Gary about this, and he told me the first time that he got there the day after, and then recently in a post on Facebook, he said he got there 4 days after. But in this book, it says that he was on site for up to 2 weeks before, and he was seen by multiple people, and that when this was all reported to the FBI, that they covered it up, and it never came out during the court investigations.
Absolutely. I actually obtained information that put him at the site at Waco, or I'm sorry, the Oklahoma City bombing at least a week before it happened.
He's been around a long time and done a lot of damage to good people. There's another. I looked into Waco a little bit to see what was really going on, and from what I found, David Koresh was teaching people how to uphold their rights, and that's all it was about. Was that something people aren't aware of is that the United States was placed under international law in 1945, and control of all our public offices was transferred to the United Nations. So we operate under international law in our courts, which follow policy, not law. And that's why when people go into court, they lose their case and they can't figure out why. So that's why I've been trying to raise awareness on what a pro se litigant is, because you don't need representation. You need to show up in court and present your own case, because you're the beneficiary of the trust. And being a pro se litigant, as part of all this nonsense, in 1933, the people were collateralized with the birth certificate when the gold and silver was confiscated. So the birth certificate is a public declaration of your civil death. So anyone that has a birth certificate is civilly dead under the Constitution now and without rights. So the only way to revoke your civil death in court is to file as a pro se litigant.
Right, and there's a case in Alabama right now that the parents were at the hospital. They were forced to take. They were going to have a home birth, and they were forced to go to the hospital, and the hospital attempted to force them to have immunizations done and to have a birth certificate and Social Security drawn up, and they refused. So their baby was actually taken away.
I haven't got into that as much as I should, because there's only so many things you can do in a day.
Right.
But I believe that the hospitals are tied into the Federal Reserve System. There's 12 branches of the Federal Reserve System set up across the country as districts, and all the hospitals are tied into those districts to collateralize the people. So every time a new person is born, it becomes a ward of the state through this declaration of the civil death.
That's right. That's why the Child Protective Services have the right to come in and take your child, because when you sign that birth certificate for your child, you are essentially signing away your parental rights to that child, to the state.
Exactly.
Yes, but it's under duress and coercion, which voids the contract. But you have to take it into federal court
Right.
pretty much to get any remedy for it.
Well,
Exactly.
you have to have a warrant to enter your home anyway. So if they don't have a warrant, right? Well, if you push the matter, then they have no legal recourse if they don't have a warrant.
No, but it's a matter of people knowing how to enforce their rights and uphold the law. Because 6 years ago, I didn't know anything about warrants or affidavits or any of that. I just knew that cops were harassing me, and I wanted it to stop.
Right. Right. Well, and any time you try to expose things that are detrimental to the government or their agenda, they come after us. That's what they do. Intimidation, and they put you under duress and enforce these things upon us.
Mm-hmm. Scare tactics.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Charles Dyer?
I do know who Dyer is. How about you, Lori?
Sorry. No.
Charles Dyer is another victim of Gary Hunt's. He was the co-founder of the Oath Keepers, and he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison on false charges. He was set up on weapons charges twice, and he beat those, so
Right. Right. And there are a lot of people involved in this whole thing that people wouldn't even suspect.
Yeah, there's another lady that works for Gary Hunt, and a lot of people don't know her or realize how dangerous she is. And her name is Deborah Swan. She's out of Texas, and she's really good at baiting people and setting them up with her engineered recordings, and then presenting it as common law material. And Deborah Swan and Gary Hunt fabricated a common law grand jury indictment against Rick Light to discredit him. He's also associated with Charles Dyer. And that's just recently been unraveling against them as we've been able to figure out the affidavit process and how common law really works.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. It's insane the amount of people that are involved in this and to the levels that they're involved.
Well, Gary Hunt is also, like you said, he's had 30 years to embed himself into this community. And, he's pretty much secured himself a name in the community, but now it's all falling apart because now people are starting to wake up to the fact of who he is and what his agenda is.
I'm glad to see the Patriot movement starting to finally expose the moles within its own ranks, because that's the only way we're going to be effective as a force now.
It's getting exposed. It's
Exactly.
getting exposed as we speak. And it's not just us that are working on it. There are several people working on this. And it is, like I said, it is absolutely insane. And I have somebody within my circle of friends that has information that I don't have, which I'm not going to release because it's not my information to release. But I can tell you that the people that are involved in this are very heavily involved in the Patriot movement and heavily involved in disinformation in the Patriot movement. So there's people speaking out about Gary Hunt and Gary Hunt speaking about them. And the whole thing is that they're all part of the same Hydra. They're just on different sides of the Hydra. So I have to do a little more digging on that, but I will be coming out with that information as well. Because I have to vet the information so that I'm not putting out false stuff.
Exactly.
I don't want to be accused of putting out propaganda. So
I try to avoid the propaganda, but sometimes you got to get in the middle of all of it and just see what turns up. And with all these different false flags, there was the same people showing up like crisis actors in a traveling circus in a sense. It went from the Bundy Ranch to the Josephine mine standoff in Oregon, and then to the other standoff in Oregon. And there was also another standoff attempted in Michigan. But the Josephine standoff, we sent in a request for video documentation because we were requested to send militia support. And once we requested the physical information, the whole thing diffused and dissolved and everybody went away. And with the Michigan situation, we presented the oath of office for anybody showing up for validity, because you don't have to present any personal information to me or anybody else. You just have to go to a local notary and show them your identification. And this is only to prove that the name you're using publicly is your real true name.
right, not some fake made up shill name.
Yeah, and that's the copy of the oath of office I sent you today. That's why we've been using that, because it's been effective at exposing, not really so much exposing the federal informants, but getting them to go away and dissolve their standoffs and false flag events.
How many people do we know for sure that were involved in Bunkerville and the Malheur event? How many are we positive were using false names and false identities?
I can't say. Well, anybody besides Blaine Cooper using a false name publicly, because nobody else would return oaths of office, so I couldn't verify if they were legit or not. Because Gary Hunt, we can't even. I don't know if that's his real name or not.
Oh, that's it.
Right. And for the record, Blaine Cooper's name is Stanley Hicks. So.
Yeah, well, with Blaine Cooper, yeah, we know he's using an alias, and he's been traced down, and he's an active part of that movement. Blaine
Absolutely.
Cooper, Buddha Bear from Bundy Ranch, Louis Prepper.
A lot of people don't realize. That Buddha, aka Brian Cavalier, he never left Bunkerville. He embedded himself with the Bundys, Cliven and Carroll. He lives on their with them.
Yep.
He only left Bunkerville for a short period of time to go pack up his apartment and move back. And in 2015, I think maybe at the end of 2014 or the beginning of 2015, he was baptized Mormon and still lives with them.
Well, the thing about Buddha Bear is during the Bundy Ranch standoff, Buddha was being presented by everybody as a former Marine, and as a former Marine myself, I don't advertise it to everybody, but I keep everything in the back of my mind, and I keep track of stuff like that. And upon further investigation, Buddha turns out to be a multiple felon that's lived with the Bundys for 6 years, and he didn't just show up out of the blue. So there's a lot of information that's coming out that people aren't sharing, and it needs to be known.
Also, when you go into the background of Stanley Hicks or Blaine Cooper, you'll see that after Bunkerville, he was approached by the FBI. "Quote unquote," he was kidnapped by them, but he was taken in for question in the FBI. And then shortly after that, if you go into the Arizona records, his court cases in the Arizona file system, you'll find that many of his court cases have been sealed.
Yeah, he gets around pretty good, and he's one of the ones that runs away from the red ink oath.
Well, and
it's out of there just in the nick of time, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he's really good. I don't have any respect for him, especially because during the Oregon standoff, he was calling for people, get up here, if you're a patriot, get up here, we need the support. And then as soon as he put out that call to arms, he got in his car and drove off.
Yeah, he left. I know it. Yeah, that was definitely, it was noticed, put it that way, by a lot of people, but ignored by a lot also.
Gary Hunt was doing the same thing, and he's trying to avoid any ties to Operation Mutual Defense, but he was on the board of directors, and after the standoff ended, his name was taken off the website, and all the information related to him was removed.
Right. We know that Gary Hunt and Ryan Payne were working together on Operation Mutual Defense. So that's Ryan Page's or Ryan Payne's website, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
And what is?
It's funny how the same names keep popping up all across the board.
Gary's is the Outpost of Freedom. Anybody who goes to that website and downloads information is, I believe, automatically put into the system.
Most likely. It seems like all these major groups out there, the leadership is all infiltrated, and it was set up from the start that way.
Yeah, well, yeah, Ryan Payne has pushed people out of leadership and taken over on several occasions.
Oh yeah, he did. He actively did that at the Bundy Ranch in front of me.
I think we need to make.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we need to make people aware of the fact that you were actually at Bundy Ranch. So you are speaking here. Everything that you're saying is firsthand experience. It's not hearsay.
Yep, firsthand experience. I went as the secretary of the Fourth Continental Congress, and the reason I went is to see how the militia deployed, because I'd never interacted with the militia, but I wanted to see it from an outside perspective. And that's how we discovered all the controlled opposition operating at the Bundy Ranch to ununify and destroy everything from within, while appearing to organize everyone.
And you were also in Oregon, right?
No.
Oh.
No, Ryan came to my house the November before the standoff in Oregon started.
Wait a minute. Now, Mike, you just said that this was a conversation that you and Ryan had in November.
Not about anybody dying. He just came here and asked me if I wanted to go do public speaking in Oregon.
about the standoff at the refuge.
Well, no, what I'm saying is this is a conversation you guys had in November about him wanting you to go to Oregon?
Yeah.
Well, wait. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. The Oregon standoff didn't take place until January. So you're saying that there was pre-planned?
Yes, the entire Oregon standoff was premeditated, and I believe that because of my conversation with Ryan Payne, but also if you look at stuff, all the trailers were set up at the refuge when they were protesting, before they went to the protest in Burns.
Right. So when Ammon Bundy called people to that rally, it was already predetermined that this was going to take place. So this wasn't off the cuff like they made people believe, correct?
Well, I can't speak for Ammon's involvement or the depth of his involvement, just Ryan Payne and Gary Hunt. Ammon, I think, is a good person that's being misdirected by people, and he's being to pursue a path.
Well, Ammon.
I think. Well, personally, I think Ammon was used in this whole situation. Absolutely. And you know, it seems funny that the people that were closest to him were Buddha, you know, Blaine Cooper, and you know, you couldn't even talk to Ammon without going through one of those two.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, all the trailers were set up before anyone even arrived.
Well, not only that, but we know that the keys, I mean, they were told not to go to work that day, and the doors were unlocked and the keys were there for them. You know, I mean, we've raised this question many times, you know, and nobody can come up with the answer.
The computers were still on, everything was still in functioning order, and they just left.
Wow.
The only issue I had with Ammon about that standoff was that he did a video. I saw him on TV saying that the refuge was the New Jerusalem settlement, and that was kind of odd. But also, he was telling people that they had enough room for several hundred people and supplies to last several years. And then when people got there, everybody had empty pockets, and it was 10 degrees below zero up there, so that wasn't really cool. But I don't know if he was doing that because he's part of them, or if it was just stuff that he was pressured into doing.
Right.
I think he was pressured to do that because he didn't want to go to Oregon. He had a lot going on with his family. This is coming from someone in the chat. She says, I think Ammon was used as well. Ammon said he didn't want to go to Oregon because he had a lot going on with his family, but he kept getting contacted about the Hammonds, so he wanted to go see for himself. And we know who was contacting him, but I'm not going to release that because that's not my information to release.
But that will come out here in the next little bit.
Absolutely will come out.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
When all this stuff in Oregon with the Hammonds started, and Ryan and Gary got involved and started the committee of safety up there, if they would have left and just left it alone like they were asked to, it would have continued on and led to good things. But going and starting that refuge standoff destroyed everything they did. And then it got all the continental judges and marshals going up there and making it even worse because they're creating offices that aren't valid.
Well,
Damien, did we lose you? Oh, there.
Yeah, those invalidities are part of the system to keep the people at bay. See, I think the whole government agenda right now is to thwart the freedom that people want to take back.
Well, there's a lot of, every time a movement starts, a graph suddenly spring up. And I believe that's what all the employees of the government.
Well, and that's why these standoffs are none of these standoffs have been perpetrated by people. They've been perpetrated by government entities. And then they have real patriots brought there so that they can manipulate people to say, look, these people are bad and they don't stand for real patriots because they're doing this bad thing. But the government, perpetrated it in the first place.
Yeah.
And
it's sad to see what our tax dollars are being used for.
Right. What do you think, Lori?
Sorry, I stepped away.
That's okay. I'm going to step away for a second too.
You know what? I'm just floored by the whole intricate design of all of this. You know, this is just amazing to hear it. I mean, this is all things that we suspected along the way and that, you know, we saw, but to have somebody actually verify that is just wow. I don't even know what to say. Now, Gary,
you'd like to ask me about the Bundy Ranch?
well, I mean, I was somewhat involved in the Bundy Ranch. I didn't go there. I was home, but I was in the conference calls with the militia and pulling information and vetting it and getting it into whoever it needed to go to at the time. And I know that there was a lot of infighting going on there, and a lot of people that were one in particular. I can't remember his name. He was exposed as an infiltrator and asked to leave the ranch at the time. I think it was by Ryan Payne. Wasn't Ryan Payne the one that asked that the one guy to leave the refuge or
at
the
gunpoint, no less.
I do remember that.
I don't remember who that was.
I don't remember his name, but you know, looking back on it and knowing, you know, what's going on now with Ryan, I'm led to more believe the fact that the guy knew who Ryan was, and that was why he was asked to leave.
Oh, hold on. Was it Dyer? I have a question.
I don't.
It says, how long was Dyer running security before Ryan and Jerry ran him out?
Dyer was never there. Not Charles Dyer. Charles Dyer's been in prison for almost 7 years. The only person that I know that was run off at gunpoint was Brian Hunt, the California State Militia Commander, and he was the original person appointed as the battlefield commander and the militia liaison to the Bundy family. And I was there for that with Cliven when it happened. And after I left to go take care of some other stuff, that's when Ryan Payne got involved, and DeLamus had a couple guys order Brian to strip off his colonel's eagles, and that's who got run off at gunpoint. Because Gary and Ryan were telling people that we were the federal informants, and Brian was actually he was on the phone with the governor's office to coordinate everything about that as a mediator, and he's who brought the U.S. Geological Survey reports to the Bundys to show why Harry Reid was after the minerals.
Amazing.
He's who I filed the lawsuit on behalf of. Well, I wrote the lawsuit for him that we filed in the state of California against the governor's office for Second Amendment infringements. And it was to get attention on the actual militia, because in the California Constitution, there are provisions for the reserve militia. And it's an office that's never been vacated. It's been usurped by confidential informants. One of them was named Jim Hagenson, who was posing as the California state commander for several years until he was exposed. And Jim Hagenson actually left the country to go back to his home country of England.
And that's the paperwork that you're actually getting ready to serve now, right?
Yeah, well, the paperwork we're serving is on the governor and the Governor Dianne Feinstein, Kamala Harris, and 12 other California state legislatures for Second Amendment infringements. And Kamala Harris was named because we originally started this as a quo warranto investigation request into the validity of the office of Jerry Brown to pass unlawful legislation, and it was ignored. We've been filing paperwork requesting quo warranto investigations since about last June or so.
Well, I know that there was a lot of foreign entities that had pretty much embedded themselves into Bunkerville.
There were a lot of agents there because
well, there was a lot of foreign agents. I mean, there was reports that, you know, when they had some of the military that were there, they had different patches on and they weren't even speaking English.
Well, there was some BLM agents that had patches that looked like 3%er patches, and they were all over this, not just the standoff, but all over the protest before the standoff. Because to me, it seemed kind of odd that they could coordinate 700 militia into a standoff so quickly without anybody knowing. I was there and I never heard about it, and I wasn't at the standoff. I was up in Mesquite, and then I was on top of the bridge when the standoff was occurring, driving back to the Bundy Ranch.
the big problem that they ran into at Bunkerville was that that a lot of the ranchers stood behind the Bundys, and they came from all over Nevada because they felt that they themselves were in harm's way as far as not being able to feed their cattle, not being able to do what they've been doing for eons. 200 freaking years they've been running that. So naturally they all came together, and the feds had a hard time with all that opposition because they couldn't run roughshod over them like they wanted to.
It was a lot more organized than people think, because when the protest started, I was following the cowboys. They were all carrying the flags on the horses. I was behind the procession in my Jeep, and then I got a phone call and went up to Mesquite to meet the people that called me. And I wasn't aware that anything was occurring other than people were going to go reclaim the cattle. So there was a lot of protesters that showed up under the bridge, but the tactical guys that were all laid out with ARs that took up sniper positions, that's what seemed coordinated in advance. And that was led by Ryan Payne.
Of course.
Who shows up to an event and says, hey, I'm going to go point guns at a federal agent? Nobody in their right mind.
Well, that's the job he was hired to do, at the direction of Gary Hunt.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I apologize. That's what he was hired to do at the direction of Gary Hunt.
Yeah.
Gary Hunt is Ryan Payne's boss.
So what is Gary Hunt doing right now?
What's Gary Hunt doing right now? Gary Hunt's probably sitting behind his computer right now, writing an article about Melvin Lee.
Which is kind of funny, because Melvin Lee and him are actually pretty good friends, aren't they?
Well, I think they used to be before the Oregon standoff. But since the Oregon standoff, because they were working together, and I think that they came into opposition at the standoff because of the kickbacks that their agencies are receiving. That's what I personally believe. I think they have a conflict of interest because of the money that their agencies are accruing. You know?
Did we lose Mike?
I don't know.
No, I'm still here. I didn't know you were asking me a question. Were you asking me a question?
What do you think about that? Why do you think that Melvin Lee and Gary Hunt are at odds?
I don't know. I've never heard of Melvin Lee before, maybe 2 or 3 days ago.
Oh. Yeah, he's another one of the big heads, just like Gary. Except he works for the FBI. He doesn't work for the ATF.
It's interesting that a lot of these people that we're talking about have Arizona connections, and they're all involved in what's going on the border.
Well, there's a group out of Arizona, Veterans on Patrol, and that seems to be an infiltration movement right there under Lewis Arthur.
Right.
Yeah, Lewis Arthur's name keeps popping up too.
Right.
His name?
Lewis Arthur. Lewis is doing a lot of good things. I do have to say, he's doing fantastic things as far as the veterans in the community. But you have to look at it's just a cover. It's just a front. He's building a name for himself legitimately. So possibly, so he can do other things in the background.
It's just his cover so he can travel freely among the patriots as a good guy.
Right. Exactly.
During the Bundy Ranch, after the standoff, I went home at Easter for a few days. I promised my kids I'd come home for Easter Sunday, so I did. And then I went back the following week, and that's when he showed up. And as soon as he got there, that's when we started having trouble and drama and all kinds of stuff, and it was all based on him. He was always accusing people of stealing his gear, and nobody wanted his gear. He had a bunch of junk. And then he ended up calling Las Vegas Metro PD, who came out, and they searched all the militia tents and went through everything looking for his stolen gear, which was in the back of Blaine's red Suburban parked in front of Bundy's house the whole time.
Wow. Yeah, because in that little group is Mark McConnell, Lewis, Blaine Cooper. They all live in the Phoenix area, and they were all tied in together. Those three, for sure. And John Ritzheimer also is in that area. There's definitely a huge Arizona influence. Not to mention that you also have Lavoy Finicum, who was murdered residing in Arizona too.
Yeah.
Now you said that you had thought, or that you knew that there was supposed to be somebody who died at Bunkerville, but that never happened because
they met too much resistance.
Right, they were met with too much resistance. Yeah, at the time, the militia was very, very heavily. They were there in strong numbers. I was actually surprised how quickly they mobilized and how many had actually shown up for that event.
Well,
and
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, there was a lot of people. I brought out 4 investigative journalists. Athena Gartrere, she interviewed Michelle Foray. We brought out Patty Beers, who has over 1 million followers on YouTube, and then Renee Powers, who is an investigative journalist. And I also paid Deborah Swan to come out from Texas because she said she would do videos on Charles Dyer. And I partly did that because Gary Hunt has set up Rick Light as the Patriot Mole all these years. And I brought Deborah Swan out believing that it would
Wow.
Yeah, just more and more people are are being outed in this.
Well, like I said to you earlier, or I think I said to you last night, that I think it would be, the list would be shorter if you were to write down who wasn't involved or who wasn't an informant or an agent. I think the list would be shorter than if you were to sit there and write who was.
Absolutely. I definitely believe that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the big players that were in Oregon, the federal players, were at Bunkerville too. So, I mean, and we have journalists that were sent there, like Pete Santilli. He was in at the Bundy Ranch, and he was also in Oregon, and you know, and every bit of the stuff that he streamed, you know, brings him and Deb both into question because of the fact that he wasn't acting as a journalist would act. He was in the middle of everything.
He was antagonizing people.
Absolutely.
I was
On
just gonna
both
say,
sides.
yeah, he was one of the main antagonists of that whole event.
Yeah.
I mean, we even have that new video that was released showing him being an antagonist at that meeting.
Right. Before Kenny showed up and he said, well, if who was it? Was
Well, they wanted to kidnap Ammon.
Yeah, Ammon. So Pete said, well, we're going to keep him here and we're going to sit him in that chair and we're going to keep him here. And the other people are like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's not a journalistic approach to things. You know, you stay out of it. You sit in the background and you record what's going on. You don't participate in the dialogue.
Exactly.
Something else that's always struck me odd was that who creates a standoff and then takes a road trip? And I mention that because of Lavoy.
What do you, can you explain that a little bit better? What do you mean by that?
Well, they occupied the refuge, and they were sending people into town to pick up supplies, and a couple guys got arrested with a county van or something like that, or a van from the refuge.
Yep.
But then they made that meeting with the people of the neighboring county with the sheriff's support. And I forgot the name of the county offhand, but I've talked to that sheriff before.
It was in John Day.
So they created the standoff at the refuge, and then they packed up and went and drove all these miles to this next community to go to a public event. And that, to me, didn't make sense because why would you, if you create a standoff, why would you go on the road?
Right, because that makes you very vulnerable. Well, that makes you vulnerable between point A and point B.
Well, also,
Not only that, but earlier that day, Ammon put out, he did a video when he was on the phone with the sheriff from John Day and making the arrangements for the meeting. And that was made public too.
Right. And almost every single person, with the exception of just a couple that were in the two vehicles that were on the road when Lavoy got shot, were agents. Almost every single one of them.
yeah.
Exactly.
The videos that were released from the ambush were chopped and edited, and I didn't actually find out until June or July after the ambush that Ryan Payne had jumped out of the vehicle the first time.
Oh yeah, we weren't shown that, were we?
No.
We had been led to believe that Ryan Payne had been shot in the chest 3 times and evacuated to the Burns County Hospital, and the second floor had been secured to keep everybody out because they were trying to set it up like the militia was going to release him somehow.
Right.
And then it took all that time to find out the truth that he jumped out the first time the vehicle stopped. Because that's the question I want Gary Hunt to answer is, why did Ryan jump out?
I have a question, and I think maybe other people have the same question now that we're on the topic of the meeting. like Damien said, there was pretty much everybody in both vehicles were agents. We have Mark McConnell, we have Buddha, we have
Ryan Payne.
you know, Ryan Payne. You know, yeah. So here's the thing: is you said, and you've mentioned a couple times that they wanted somebody to die in the first standoff at Bunkerville. That didn't happen. We understand that. So do you, I mean, in your opinion, because I know you can't speak for anybody, but in your opinion, do you think that these agents were in these vehicles for a reason that possibly if the agents didn't kill Lavoie, that one of them would have?
I don't know. I don't know because I didn't know that Shauna Cox was part of them because I heard she filed a lawsuit on behalf of the Patriots, and I haven't really followed her anymore than that. But as far as that, I don't know. There's no telling what these guys would do.
Right.
Well, maybe Shauna's not in the mix then. Maybe Shauna Cox is one of the good ones.
I don't think Shauna, I honestly don't, I don't believe Shauna was, I think she was just at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, if they're the ones that are good, you could Victoria is she's okay. I've you know, there's no question about Victoria.
Is that the girl
Right.
that was
Yes.
in the car?
Yes.
Or the truck?
Yeah, that was the young girl. She was just going, she was supposed to sing at the, you know, at the meeting. She was supposed to go there, and they were going to do prayer, and she was going to sing a couple of hymns or something at the meeting. So she was just, basically, she was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right. Well, and the fact remains that when Ryan Payne got out of the car, if you remember the audio that was played at that time, there's no agents are telling him to get on the ground. They're not telling him to stop or anything. I never heard anything like that. When he got out, he just got out. And you know, if you get stopped by the police and you get out of your vehicle, even on a routine traffic stop, you're going to be asked to either get back in your car or, you know, or to stop. Don't.
Well, what they would have done is they would have done a felony stop, which means that you would have been commanded to turn around, put your hands above your head, place them, you know, lace them under the back of your head, drop to your knees. I mean,
Yes.
there's certain things that, you know, people want to know, how do I know this? Well, I know this because I'd been in a couple of felony stops in Phoenix during my heydays. But, you know, there's certain protocols, and they were not followed, especially, you know, if they were trying to end a federal standoff, you think they would have followed protocol.
Right.
They definitely would have followed protocol. Interesting.
To me, watching it looks scripted.
Absolutely. The only thing is you know, Ammon, Boy, Victoria, and possibly Shauna were the only one, and Ryan were the only ones that didn't really know what was going on. The rest of the people, the players, were following the script. They were just, you know, they were victims.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it ended by, you know, an innocent man being killed. You know, they got their pound of flesh. They got what they wanted to. They accomplished what they wanted to accomplish in Bunkerville, which is extremely sad.
Well, and
It makes
go ahead.
it makes me sad to think about this, that there's so many good people out there that just want a better future for our kids and our families, and we're being lured and misled by all these frauds and set up as we're the frauds. And that's why I'm glad that the controlled opposition is finally being exposed within the Patriot movement, because it's been long overdue.
Well,
Yeah, it has been long overdue. And unfortunately, you know, those of us that are exposing this, we're the ones that are made to be, you know, to be the bad guys, because people are so, they're responding on emotion. You know, that Bunkerville, Burns was very emotional. And I think that that is something that the federal government banks upon. They bank upon people reacting on their feelings. They did it in Waco, they did it in Ruby Ridge, they did it in Bunkerville, and they did it at Malheur. So, you know, if we look at all the aspects of all four of those events, we can see that there's a lot of similarities. And the fact that people were liking both Malheur and to Waco so soon in the standoff, you know, you had to wonder how the game plan was going to play out. You know, we pretty much knew it wasn't going to end well, and it didn't.
No, and actually, it was worse than I actually thought it would be in there at the end. You know, crap.
I had been in contact with Ryan. I got rid of my cell phone because of the wireless and microwave radiation. I became sensitive to it, so I just use a house phone now. But during the Oregon standoff, I was still in touch with Ryan Payne, and we texted back and forth. And I sent him a lot of information on how corporations work, and that the Harney County Sheriff was appointed, not elected, and that there was other avenues that they could expose, and they never addressed any of it. And we also sent Citizens Action Network sent up a civil peace flag that I was hoping Ryan would display publicly to show the difference between where we are and how the government should be. And that flag never appeared anywhere. Neither did any of the information on the text I sent him or the information about the sheriff.
Not surprising, is it, looking back?
No, and the reason that I had been in charge with the other sheriff, I spoke to him on the phone, and I sent him a letter because during the Bundy Ranch, Renee Powers came out, and she dug into the charter and the paperwork that the Bundys were talking about just so we could see if it was valid or not. And it turned out that the Bundys were within their rights, and they were on the right track. So during the Oregon issue, I researched the Harney County charter, which came out of the neighbor. I think it was a Glenn County. The Harney County charter came out of the neighboring county charter, and that sheriff actually has jurisdiction over the Harney County sheriff, but he's not enforcing it. And that was the issue, and I notified Ryan about that too. But none of that ever came out, because that should be exposed, that how the charters operate for these corporations. They can be revoked any time for fraud, but the people are all being misdirected, and then the people being appointed into these positions that are supposed to be elected aren't following the law, because they're being directed under international policy.
Yeah, and I think that's where people don't realize that you know, we need to get educated on the deceptions behind our legal system, behind the lawyers, behind the bench, behind, you know, the bar. I mean, it's not even American, it's foreign, and it goes back to the British Crown. And people don't even realize that. They think that they're, you know, because we're under the Constitution and we're protected under the Constitution, once you walk into court, you are not under the Constitution whatsoever. And I think that's where people are misguided and misled into believing you have rights when you really don't.
No,
Even in all our printed material, there's another misdirection, because lawyers and attorneys are opposites, not the same thing. A lawyer is not a member of any bar association. A lawyer is just simply a common person well-versed in law that upholds rights on the land. And that's basically what a pro se litigant is, somebody that knows their rights and how to enforce them in a federal court.
Wow.
So if you look at, I can put it in the chat with Damien if you want to share it, Damien. It's the information on bar attorneys that they're required to register as foreign agents when they pass the bar exam.
Sure, go ahead, send it.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to share that too.
And you know, yeah, when you step into a courtroom, you're stepping into admiralty law. So the yellow fringe on the flag actually signifies that you're stepping into maritime territory.
Yeah, But there's a way to get around that, and a lot of people aren't aware of it, and it's your status as a pro se, because most people don't even know what a true pro se litigant is. A true pro se litigant uses administrative process to create their contracts and rebut all the presumptions of the courts, because the admiralty courts run under color of law, which is policy, and they just make it up as they go. But if you go into a federal court, statutes and codes hold up as unconstitutional. So there is a way to defeat all this stuff. We just have to raise awareness and teach people the correct method on how to enforce your rights, because having an attorney represent you is the subversion of your rights.
Right.
Under the Sixth Amendment, it says that you're entitled to lawful assistance of counsel, and it's been construed under policy to mean that you have the right to a bar attorney. But your right is to remain pro se and present your own case in a federal court, because as a pro se, you are the beneficiary to the contract of the Bill of Rights.
While we're on the subject,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, go ahead and finish. I was gonna wait till you're done.
There's two types of beneficiaries. There's an incidental beneficiary, which is your public servant bound by oath, and then there's the intended third-party beneficiary, and that's you in your individual capacity. I'm uploading all this stuff to our chat, Damien, but it's taken a while. My computer's being slow for some reason.
That's okay. I don't. I may actually have to put this in the description box because one is a blank page.
Do you want me to open the FARA law doc and just share the information in it?
Sure, that's fine.
So it sounds like you're having trouble seeing the docs I'm sharing with you today, because we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, I actually opened it, and it says blank page.
Okay.
And I tried to post it into the chat, but
Okay. I just posted the case law, so you can read it now. So when people are being dragged into court, if you're ever labeled a defendant in a court and there's no injured party, what you want to do is reassign your status, because being labeled a defendant, that's the wrong status. You're not the beneficiary, you're the surety of the trust. And the surety pays the bills, the beneficiary receives the benefit. So through this misdirection of rights, the prosecutor has become the beneficiary, and the defendant has become the surety. So if you're ever labeled a defendant and there's no injured party in your case, what you want to do is notice the court that you've been misidentified and you are in fact a counter-plaintiff. Because if you do that, then the prosecutor has to prove its case to the court. And if there's no injured party, there's no case. So then you can move forward with a false claim against the prosecutor.
Right. No victim, no crime.
exactly.
Yeah.
So now that we're on the topic of the whole judicial system, looking at the case against the Ammon and Ryan, what's your opinion on that?
I wrote a counter-plaintiff complaint for Ryan Payne. I also wrote one for Skylar Barbeau that was never presented in court, and the family never presented it. The reason I did that is because both people are suspected of being confidential informants, and I wanted to find out the truth, because Skylar had spent 6 months at my house after the Bundy Ranch, and he got involved in some trouble locally, and I went to his court hearing with him with a video camera, and I wasn't allowed in the courtroom. I was forced to of it. It's been covered up and nobody will share it. And that's exactly why I did that, just to see the results. What I was hoping for was that it would be brought before a grand jury, and then the grand jury could investigate the validity, because we don't even know if is Ryan Payne his real name.
Wow.
During the Bundy Ranch, Ryan Payne told me that he was related to Thomas Payne, and I looked into it a little bit. I never found any genealogy or anything, but Ryan Payne spells his name P-A-Y-N-E, but Thomas Payne's name is P-A-I-N-E.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Skylar's counter-plaintiff complaint, I started a page, Citizens Action Network Political Hostages, on Facebook. And all the counter-plaintiff complaints and all the paperwork I filed in Skylar's case is listed there. I put a lot of exposure on him that went nowhere, especially with the family, which really shocked me. And I had a brain fart right there. Sorry.
You're all right.
I think it's interesting if people see this counter-plaintiff complaint, because if it would have been presented to the judge in court, if Skylar would have signed it, he would be free right now, because there's no injured party in his case, and the contracts were all executed lawfully, so the judge would have to honor his oath and uphold the contract and sign it and release Skylar. And that never happened. And that paperwork, you don't really see it anywhere. It's still listed on the pages, and I share it once in a while, but you don't really see anybody else sharing it, and nobody's ever disputed the validity of it.
Wow.
And if you guys want to check it out, I've been trying to share files with Damien, but they're not viewable for some reason. But if you get on Facebook and you go to Can Political Hostages, everything is set up in there in the files and notes. I found it right. It's called Can Political Hostages.
Okay, let me, Can Political Hostages, got it. Okay, I will share the page in the chat room with everybody right now. And let's do this copy. Let's go, it's in the chat room right now. There you go. All right.
So one of the pictures, well, I just clicked on the page, and one of the pictures that popped up was the certified mailing I did to Skylar at the jail facility. When I contacted the clerk in Skylar's case, he's the one that gave me the address of where to write to Skylar at. So I served a counter-plaintiff complaint. I had Skylar's brother, Justin, serve a counter-plaintiff complaint on Skylar's public defender before that hearing started, his first hearing. And then I also overnighted another the counter-plaintiff complaint to Skylar by mail to his jail facility. So he had it. So no matter what happened, I was hoping he would get a copy of it. And Rich Summers, he's part of Can Washington. He went to the hearing for me to observe Ryan Payne, and also to be there when Justin served the paperwork as a witness. And he said that the public defender refused to show it to Skylar, and that the family was basically told, stay away from me, I don't know what I'm doing. But this paperwork would have cleared Skylar's name or exposed. I think, I can't say what's going on with him, because people have asked me, is he a confidential informant? And I can't say for sure yes or no anymore, because of all the oddities occurring in this case and other circumstances before this.
Like I said earlier, the list of who wasn't a confidential informant or who wasn't an agent is probably shorter than the ones that were, because at this point it's I can only think of 3 or 4 names who were just happened to be the victims of the wrong place at the wrong time on all of this.
I know I was in the wrong place at the right time. I didn't let it happen twice.
Right. Right. Yeah, first time shame on them, second time shame on me, right?
Exactly.
I know why it wasn't opening, because I don't have Word.
Well, when Rich came down, he added Adobe Acrobat to my computer, and it did something to my Word programs, and it's saving
I absolutely love Adobe. Adobe's fantastic. What I don't like is Word.
Well, I grew up in the woods, and I'm a hillbilly, and I like being out on the river gold mining. And before I had kids, I used to spend all the good months of the summer living in a tent on the river gold mining, and I wouldn't come out until it either got snowed out or rained out. And that's where I'd like to be. I'm only here doing this because it has to be done.
Rain doesn't stop me. Nope. I'll camp in the rain. I don't care. I love
I know. I thought that was pretty cool when you told me that on your walk, that you slept through a couple blizzards or stayed out in them, and that's pretty cool. There's not a lot of people that have the intestinal fortitude to do things like that.
Yeah, it was quite the amazing journey. I mean, pouring rains and blizzard.
Nor rain, nor sleet, nor snow will keep our demon down.
I'm telling you what, those winters up in the north, like around Michigan or even the upper peninsula of Michigan, where it was like 10 feet deep of snow, and I was walking with snowshoes on, and it was amazing, really amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you document it with videos?
I didn't have the phone that I have now, but I had a lot of articles written, and I kept logs of where I was and whatnot. Although my log books are gone now, but
You do have a lot of pictures that people took along the way of you.
that I do, and I can't.
And some of the news or the TV stations along the way did stories about you, so it is documented. So
yep, it surely is. Yep, and I have an old MySpace that has a ton of hundreds of pictures from my journey on it. But I can't get into it because I don't remember the password. Somebody tried to fish my.
Damien, all you got to do is keep doing shows like this, and the haters will definitely look into you, and they'll pull those pictures up for you. Trust me on that one.
Exactly.
Trust me
kept
on
threatening
that.
to expose me for everything I did during the Bundy Ranch and make up all this crap about me, and I told him, go ahead. I said that the only thing I care about is that you put a link to my website. I don't care if you give me good publicity or bad, just give them the link to the website.
Amen to that. Exactly. It's exactly the way I feel about it. Good or bad. You know, you keep making videos about me, it sends people over to my channel, and they stay because they like what they hear.
Right.
We tried to share. I brought a legal group down to the Bundy Ranch after Easter because before Easter I had talked to Carol Bundy. A lot of people were coming in. Stuart Rhodes called for that drone strike and then packed up and left and told the Oath Keepers to abandon the area. So there's a lot of people that came from around the country, and he had promised them gas money out of the donations when they got there. So there was a lot of people showing up crying and trying to figure out how they were going to get home. And I handed out probably about $3,600 to people to give them gas money and food money to get home and stuff. And Carol Bundy found out about it and asked me to come down to the house and offer to pay me back, and I said no, because you guys will need the money for other people later. And I just did it because I wanted to do something good. And she thanked me for it, and we talked a little bit, and then I told her I was leaving to go home for Easter, and she asked if I would come back, and I said yeah, and we talked about bringing the legal group down to help them with their issues. So I brought the people down, but Gary Hunt and Ryan Payne got in there and told them not to use us, that we were trying to get Cliven sent to jail, and that wasn't true. We weren't trying to set him up or misdirect anybody. We were trying to show him how to file pro se complaints. And who I originally started speaking to when I got into the law. But there was just a lot of misdirections and issues down there, and it's nice to start seeing them straightened out finally.
Where do you see all of this going next? I mean, where do you see, has the federal government gotten what they wanted on these militia groups, or do you think that they're planning yet another roundup, so to speak?
Well, I can't confirm that they're planning a roundup. Only time will tell. But everything that the militia units that are involved with the 4th Continental
think a lot of them don't even realize that you guys do have a way of vetting them without them even realizing they're being vetted, and that's through the oath of office, correct?
Exactly, and it's also a method of pre-qualifying political candidates. Damien mentioned that he's thinking about running for president in 2020, so I sent him an oath so he could see what it looks like. And so far, I've been trying to get CISPOA and the sheriffs to recognize these oaths, and they haven't. There's only one candidate. His name is Detective Gordon Martinez, and he's the detective that busted O.J. Simpson in Las Vegas several years ago. And I went down to Las Vegas last June or July, and he did his red ink oath in front of us with the notary. So we actually have a red ink common law constitutional sheriff candidate, and then we also have a red ink notary for Nevada now, because Nevada is really moving forward a lot with the grand jury movement using the de jure civil flag. Nye County has made the most progress on it so far with a guy named Gary Bergman. He's been doing a lot of good work out there.
Wow.
Qualify all the candidates. Their public oath, their oath, and the first oath is what has validity, because for an oath to be valid, it has to be sworn in front of a notary on the land. Because when you go to a court and they say you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, that's all fraud, because you're sworn by the judge, not a notary. But it's just a bar attorney. They don't have any standing. So what the purpose is in sharing the information on the notaries is that when people create affidavits, you take it to a notary and have it notarized with a giraffe form, and the courts won't accept giraffe forms. They want you to use the acknowledgement. So the way to get around that is to have the notary do the giraffe form first, and then attach an acknowledgement after the giraffe, because then everything's a union between the de facto and the de jure. And have you guys ever heard the word de jure before?
Yes.
Do you know what your de jure standing is? If you go to your county law library, they usually all have a set of books called Words and Phrases A to Z, and these books go back to the 1600s, and it's got all kinds of case law in there. And if you go to the L book, mine, I bought a set off eBay, and under L, it's got law of the flag. And if you look at it, it says that the law of the flag governs the contract. So by using the notary, you're executing the contract on the land, which is the de jure status. But then you can enter it into your court case, and the courts are de facto under admiralty. So you've actually brought the land into their ship, and they can't fight it. And they don't ever respond to this paperwork, because they can't, because they're the fiction, not you. So when you move your case into federal court as a pro se litigant, you've already laid out if you've done this properly, you've laid out your entire case. So there's no need for a trial, because there's 3 rules I found that apply to the courts that are pretty effective. The courts have determined that every matter is civil. Every civil matter must have a lawfully binding contract between the parties, and the courts must go by the written instruments first. So if you use a notary, if you write a letter and then have it notarized with the giraffe form, you've made an oath-bound truthful statement that under the oath-bound statement under penalty of perjury.
Interesting.
In this manner. So when you file your case, the judge can review it under administrative process and award you a default judgment without going to trial, because you've executed all your instruments correctly.
There's so much to this. The deception throughout our entire lives is just so deep. It's hard to imagine that the federal government, those of us who are awake to the truth know that the government is anything but our friends. But to actually listen to how deep the deception goes is just mind-blowing.
There's another case in federal court in Washington State right now with Rich Summers. We filed a Sixth Amendment complaint for ineffective assistance of counsel against the bar attorneys. And Rich was getting exposed as a sovereign citizen by the Wenatchee world, but I think that they're now starting to understand that this process is valid and powerful. Is a misdirection. You have two capacities. You have your corporate capacity, which is your all caps name. So if you look at your driver's license or your social security card, that's your corporate capacity.
Right.
You can
That's
actually
where the
operate in a sense of
UCC.
the duality. You just have to know how to enforce it and
Right.
be able to
Right.
relate it where people can understand the concept.
Right. That's where the UCC and your straw man comes into play.
I didn't hear you.
I said that's where the UCC1 and your straw man come into play.
Yeah, I've tried using the UCC paperwork before I followed the administrative process, and the Secretary of State won't record my documents.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, with the UCC1, you only get one shot. If you don't do it right the first time, chances are they are not going to give you a second shot at it.
I can't hear you, Lori.
I said the problem with the UCC1 is that if you don't do it right the first time, chances are they're not going to give you a second shot at it.
Well, the thing about the UCC is you're still in admiralty because the UCC is statutes and codes, which hold up as unconstitutional.
Right. See, and that's a whole different show. It's talking about, I mean, there's groups out there who are, giving a really bad name, a really bad rap to this whole sovereign citizen movement. There's definitely batshit crazy trying to take a hold of the sovereign citizen and trying to use that to their advantage to actually deceive people.
That's why knowing the difference between the flags, the civil flag is a de jure status on the land at peace, and the civil flag hasn't flown publicly since the end of World War I, because in World War II, control was transferred to the United Nations. So when you see people wearing the fringed flag on their arm as a patch, they're basically representing the United Nations policy on the land. So we actually have two state militias that are actually using the civil flag as their arm patch now, because as far as we know, we're all at peace. War hasn't been declared, so we're flying the correct flag. And now that other militia units are seeing it, some of them are interested in it, but others are backing away from it, and that makes me question who they are too. So I try to send them the oath especially, and then I never hear back from them, or they'll execute the oath wrong and do an affirmation on it, not a jurat, because the affirmation just means that you sign the document. And usually in our oath we remove the words or affirm, because or affirm means that you're a bar attorney usually, or you have another oath or a loyalty to somebody else that you're not speaking of.
Right. Sorry, I had to step away there for a minute. Coffee calls.
Coffee calls.
Coffee calls.
So let me ask you, Mike, when you're talking about these militias that are using the new flag and that they're willing to fill out this paper, make this affidavit for you, where do the 3%ers stand?
The 3%ers have never gotten involved with anything we're doing. I don't believe that the 3%ers are legit. I think it's another controlled opposition movement where they're just gathering names and information on good patriots trying to do the right thing. Because the people, the average people, we've all got good intentions, so we join these movements trying in the belief that we're doing something good. But all they're doing, like the Oath Keepers led by Stuart Rhodes is a bar attorney, and he won't expose the fact that he's a bar attorney. He has no Foreign Agents Registration Act statement on file, and if you go to the local Oath Keeper meetings, they'll tell you that you have to pay the donation money or pay your fees to attend the meetings, and that they need this money because Stuart Rhodes is representing incarcerated patriots, which is crap, because Charles Dyer is the co-founder of the Oath Keepers. So why is he sitting in jail if Stuart Rhodes is a Yale-educated bar attorney that's a patriot?
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to hear you say, because those are exactly what I was thinking about the 3%ers and about Stuart Rhodes and all of them. What about Brandon?
Curtis?
No, my God, his name.
When I first got involved with the concept of the Fourth Continental Congress, it was under Major General William Flatt, who had been commissioned as the Secretary of Defense under the Third Continental Congress. So after the Third Continental Congress was infiltrated and dissolved, we decided to move forward with the Fourth Continental Congress, and we had a meeting with several people, and he's who actually made me the Secretary of the Fourth Continental militia is self-funded, and when you're paying for stuff out of your own pockets, you don't have the money to pay for it. And he said when you come across a militia unit that's well organized and has a lot of high-end, fancy, expensive gear, they're usually well-funded. And he said that those are the people that you want to steer clear from. And there's a very good reason for that. So I believe that whole movement was co-opted and set up.
Right. What is your opinion on, it's Brandon Curtis, the Idaho 3%ers. What's your opinion on him? I know that after Malheur, a lot of people left the Idaho 3%ers.
I can't say anything about him personally, except the statement that he appears very well funded and well organized.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I've never talked to Brandon. He's never responded to anything we've tried to get involved or involve him with, because we reached out to everybody at the standoff so we could form a general picture and know all the players, and then have an avenue to add information in to steer people correctly, because we wanted to steer people to the fact that there's everything's a corporation. Officials are supposed to be elected, not appointed, and that charters have authority and standing, and that if there's fraud involved, that's why the neighboring county, that the Harney County charter was grandfathered in from another original charter county from Oregon. So the sheriff of that county actually has a superior jurisdiction over Sheriff Ward, and he could have removed him from office at any time, and he refused to get involved.
Right. There's a question in the chat room. How did Brandon Curtis escape prosecution when he was the one negotiating with the FBI and the figurehead at the call to actions?
That's a good question.
Because he should have on his call to action alone should have placed him under arrest according to using the logic of the federal government as far as who they've arrested so far. It seems like he's done more for the call to action. He's done more to get people there or to rile people up than some of the ones that they have in custody.
I think that probably speaks for itself right there.
Self-explanatory.
He appears very well funded.
Well, I knew it was. That's why. I mean, you know. It's just, I mean, it seems like the more we dig into this and the more answers we get, the more questions that we dig up. You know, it
always
I don't know.
More questions, but now that we know who some of the key players are under Gary Hunt, it's starting to come together and also unravel their efforts. Because after the Oregon standoff, there haven't really been any more major standoffs since.
Right. Exactly. I know. I'm laughing too. Somebody in the chat room said, "But hey, he vetted Pete Santilli with the FBI, so all's good."
Oh, Brandon did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. He vetted Pete with the FBI. Yeah. There's the pot calling the kettle black there, basically.
There was a radio show. Chuck Smith of Panda Radio, and what Chuck Smith was doing was trying to get people to donate money to hire an attorney to sue me into bankruptcy for things about Stewart Rhodes. And Tom Lacavera with Resurrect the Republic had a radio show too, and he's the one that told me about this other issue on the other radio show. So on his radio show, they got Chuck Smith on there, and I rebutted everything they said, and they withdrew all their accusations and nonsense, and have never bothered me since. Because when Gary Hunt has tried to lure me out for information since he met me, and I don't work for him. I do what I want, and I make the statements that I do, and I share the information on my time, not his. So he tried to discredit me for a lot of things because I wouldn't give him the information he wanted. But because of the Panda radio show, I basically proved to them that I know what I'm doing with the law, and they didn't want any part of it, and they backed off and haven't bothered me since.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they can't have somebody that actually knows what they're talking about, because, you know, you would know that they don't know anything, or that they're deceptive, and you could possibly call them out on that, and they can't have that.
Well, and Gary has gone through and deleted any messages that rival what he says. So anyone that doesn't agree with him, with what he says, or calls him out on propaganda or anything else, he deletes their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds about right.
Well, he can delete it, but there's people that are quicker than him that catch those screenshots before he deletes them.
Right.
After the Bundy Ranch standoff, when I came back down after Easter, I brought a guy named Jeff Ball down, who was a private attorney general from Washington State, and he taught law classes at the chow hall to the militia during lunchtime. We were handing out paperwork to people because people were worried that they were going to get arrested trying to leave to go home. So we were teaching them how to enforce their rights, so they would feel a little more comfortable leaving, knowing the law.
Wow.
Wow.
I know. I'm sitting here trying to take all of this in.
Oh, it's even bigger than this. It's way bigger than this. And I wish I could. I wish that.
Well, this is just the beginning, Damien. The information that or that these, your sources are putting together, this is far from over. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as the revelations that are about to come in the next few days or the next few weeks on this whole topic.
It definitely is. I think people are going to be quite astounded by the information that comes out, and not just the amount of information, but the magnitude of information and what it entails, because this goes so much further than just a few FBI or CIA agents.
Right.
It is huge.
It's a criminal conspiracy in combination to overthrow the legitimate government of the United States.
Yes.
So it's inciting insurrection and rebellion unlawfully using our own tax dollars against us.
I have a question in the chat room. Somebody wants to know what your take is on Michael Emery in his case.
Who's Michael Emery?
Okay. All right. He's he was in Burns and he was arrested March, I think it was.
At the Bundy Ranch, it was different. When I got there, and initially, when we went down to the house with Cliven, there was a lady named Lady Sonia who was supposed to be the Nevada State Militia Commander. We took her and Brian Hunt down to the house. We met Cliven and we went in the back room. They all had a talk. Lady Sonia said that she wanted nothing to do with this and left, and that's when Cliven appointed Brian as the liaison and the battlefield commander. And then that's when it fell apart under Ryan. So Brian was run off, and I didn't know that Ryan Payne was dirty or that he worked for Gary Hunt at the time. I was just trying to help out, interact, and figure out how all this was coming together and what was really going on. So I asked Ryan. He had blown up the motor in his Jeep, he said, so he didn't have a ride. So I asked him if he wanted me to be his driver. I figured that's the best way to find out what's really going on, and nobody knew who I was. So we'd been there about a week, and Ryan told me that he was going to have to pack up and leave because his wife was pressuring him to get home and get back to work because they were broke. And I didn't know that Ryan was dirty at the time, so I asked him, what would it take to keep you here? Because I felt that if he packed up and left, the movement would fall apart, and that the first deployment of the militia would be a failure, and that the overall mission of the Bundy Ranch, so to speak, would fall apart. And it would, because the whole object was to empower Americans that we can fix our country. And I felt that if the Bundy Ranch was a failure, that it would disintegrate the Patriot movement, and basically we would have lost the war before it even started, so to speak. So I asked Ryan, what would it take to keep you on site here? And he said, well, my monthly bills add up to $2,500 a month, so that's what it would take. So I told him I can pay you to be here for 2 months. I figured that would be plenty to get it all together. And I had asked him, he said, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, I want you to work on the oath of office and presenting it, and to present the paperwork that we're trying to get Cliven to use to show him that there are lawful methods and that we can help him fix this. And instead, that's when him and Gary started telling everybody that I was a Fed and undercover and an informant, all this stuff. So when I had come back after Easter, the man didn't honor his word. He never presented the oath to the sheriff. And after everything ended, there was FBI agents that were identified as overwatching everything. They were in tactical gear with sniper rifles. So ever since then, we've just been waiting and watching. And I've known about this book on Gary Hunt since the Bundy Ranch, but the person that told me about it he couldn't remember the name of the author. And when I posted that article on Facebook a few days ago, that was the day after. I kept pestering him all the time, where's this book, where's this book? And he finally found it, and that's why we just recently released it. And it's been
What is the name of the book? What is the name of the book?
It's by Patrick B. Riley. I don't remember. It's on my Facebook wall. I got to go look it up.
Okay. Yeah, I would like the name of that. I would like to have Damien can put it in the description area below this broadcast so people can go check that out. Most definitely.
And that's in what now? Oh, this?
That's the book that was written on Gary Hunt.
There's a link on that chat on Facebook that you've been in with me, Damien. It's in there. I got to scroll down to find it because it's been a few days since I posted it.
That's fine. I can probably find it. Let me see if I can find it. I'll put it in the chat and in the description box.
I just tagged you in it, Damien.
There you
go. I'm looking.
It's on your wall too.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
I'm going to do this. Here we go.
It says, if you can Google this, it says Patrick B. Briley, the Oklahoma City bombing case revelations. And if you read the table of contents, it mentions Gary's name in the table of contents, and then he's mentioned several times throughout the book.
Dang it. Why? Want it? No. Well, this is stupid.
This is stupid.
I hate computers sometimes. I'm telling you. I do.
Yeah, it's them messing with you.
No, I copy a link and it doesn't want to paste it.
Push your Control V or Control C and then Control V.
Control C.
Yeah, you got to press them at the same time. Control C, highlight it, highlight the link you want to do. Press Control C, and then wherever you want to place it, put your cursor there and press Control V, and it should.
I know how to go around this. Hold on. I'm just gonna go to the website.
Big cat.
I'm gonna copy the link and then paste it. There we go. Ah. Screw you, computer. Yeah, I got it. Wow. The more people we talk to, the more information that comes out, the more in depth it comes out.
and the more questions I have, I'm sure, I mean, I'm going to go back and listen to this, and I'm sure I'm going to have another, few pages of questions that are going to come up after this. Like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. In the next few weeks, days, weeks, whatever, a lot more of information on this topic is going to come out. And I think that it's going to bring awareness and hopefully open up the eyes of people who are still blindly following these people.
Well, I hope that it goes a little farther than that. I really hope that people check out my website and look at the information on there and begin to follow the law instead of driving all over the place to all these standoffs and public events, because we do need to protest, but there's no need for reason to drive several states away and spend all their money and resources doing this stuff when you can be even more effective locally, because that's where we really need to focus is on our own communities.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Charity begins at home, guys. That's the way I see it. There's enough to do in our communities that we don't have to drive, like you said, states away to try to make a difference.
The thing about the red ink on a contract is when you go to the notary, if you sign everything in red ink and you use the jurat, you have to put a thumbprint in their book. And the reason that we're using the red ink is because if you use black ink, you're civilly dead in contract. Blue ink is international maritime law of the sea, and red ink is your personal honor. So that's why we use the red ink on these oaths, because it's basically an integrity oath. There's nothing underhanded or deceptive about it. It's just based on your personal integrity. You don't have to identify any of your personal information to me. You just have to identify yourself to your local notary. So there's no security leaks or risks, and then you can verify if the person is actually who they're presenting themselves as through social media.
And I can understand why a lot of the people involved in this don't want to partake or participate in this whole oath, because they have a secret to keep. They have their identity to keep. They have who they work for to keep secret too from us. Which, here's my thing, is I have nothing to hide, and I would have no problems presenting anything to anybody who wanted to see it. But that's just me. I'm transparent when it comes to stuff like that. But those that do have things to hide, those are the ones that you have to question. What is their reason behind not wanting to present this information to people?
Another picture of the oath on Damien's wall. And this is an oath I've shared through the last couple of years. And it's about showing how public servants, if they swear the correct oath in red ink, it's a liability contract to the people.
Mm-hmm.
It's on your wall right now, Damien. It says the oath of office is a negotiable security instrument and a quid pro quo performance contract. Breach of oath is fraud. Fraud negates any contract. And then at the bottom it says, public servants currently swear a blue ink international maritime oath to support and defend the policies of the United Nations. Public servants in red ink only to we the people.
Wow. Amazing. We definitely covered a lot today, guys. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Thanks for having me.
I told everybody you were coming the other day, and then we didn't get a chance to do it.
Yeah.
I've been having snafus ever since I got rid of my cell phone. I had a house phone turned back on because when I was on the phone in my hand, my right hand would, the numbness would kind of last for 4 or 5 hours after the phone call. It started making me kind of nervous about being exposed to so much microwave radiation like that. So I got rid of the phone, but ever since June, on the 1st of every month, AT&T shuts off my phone, and I have to fight with them anywhere from 1 to 3 days to get them to turn the phone back on. And my phone was set up on auto pay. This is odd. And then I have these issues every month. So I've filed a complaint with the Justice Department, the Federal Trade Commission, and the president of AT&T to get it addressed. And the president says that he can't contact me because I haven't provided a phone number. Well, if you're the president of AT&T, you would think that he can make a phone call and say, hey, turn his call him. And then as soon as I make the phone call, then turn his phone back off.
Right.
That's pretty simple. So that's why we didn't have the show the other day, because I went through that issue. You and I talked about doing a show, and then on the first, my phone got shut off again.
All par for the course.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm going to actually, with Damien's permission, I'm going to re-upload this broadcast to my channel, so we can get more people out there to listen to this and to, like I said, hopefully open up their eyes, or get them at least to take a look at the information that's presented here today.
You do not have to ask my permission to upload my video.
I know,
to your
but
channel.
you know, it's the right thing to do.
Nope, absolutely not.
Okay. Strike my channel.
I think, no, you know what? I am not the kind of person to strike a channel. Even if they said some bad stuff about me, like I really wouldn't strike their channel, because I could care less. Go ahead.
You're
Send
a better man,
more
better
viewers
man than
my way. It's cool.
me.
Well, it just makes no sense to strike someone's channel. They're just going to make another channel. You know, I did.
No, I did too. Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and then I didn't even get the chance to use my other channel because one, I couldn't get on it because they had YouTube locked up or something. And
Yeah, we both had a hard time. I couldn't even get on my channels that night.
And two, they let my video go back up the next day, so I never had to use it.
That's pretty awesome. Pretty
That post
awesome.
the oath that I put on your wall it's not showing up anymore.
Of course not. Oh no, it's here. No, it's here. I can.
I put the oath, and then I went back to put the case law on it, and the oath isn't showing up anymore. So I posted the case law on your wall, and that's not showing up either.
I'm going to. It should be there. I'm going to send it to Lori right now. She could post it in the chat.
Okay. Also, there's another question in the chat room for you, Mike. Somebody wants to know what your opinion is of the last day of the final four that were standing there at the refuge.
My opinion of the last four standing at the refuge.
Mm-hmm.
I think the very last person there was David Fry.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I've talked to his dad because they were questioning me about why I was exposing Gary Hunt. And I've looked into David Fry and watched the videos his dad shared, and he comes from a long line of Marines.
And that's William, correct?
Samurai.
William Fry.
The other people that were there, I don't remember who they were. I think there was a man and a woman couple that were dancing and holding hands and hugging, waiting for the end to come. But other than that, the last person I remember is Blaine Cooper putting out that call to arms and then abandoning the scene.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what he did. He did the call to arms and then got in his truck and drove away into the sunset.
But it all comes back to the
abandoning basically everybody who was there.
If we were following the Constitution as a republic, as we were promised and guaranteed, we wouldn't be having any of these issues of false flags and crisis actors and confidential informants and federal agents subverting the law and using it against us and then making us appear to be the bad guys when all we're trying to do is fix the problem.
Well, and that's the problem. We're exposing them, and that's the problem. They don't like that.
No, but that's also what we've been doing with the militias, because the militia has had such a bad stigma for a long time. We began writing the state commander's course, and then we've also got a training manual for the militia for anybody wanting to join, create, or start their own unit. To be a state commander, because we've followed all the constitutional practices and done everything right, then we're establishing lawful professional positions, and that's what we need is professional people that are legitimate, that are overseeing this stuff. Because you can't just have a mob of people getting together and saying, "Hi, I are a militia."
Right. Right. And I think that's exactly what's going on. Let me ask you a question. I live in Illinois. Is there a legitimate militia here in Illinois that if I wanted to look into joining, I would be able to?
The only militia that I know about in Illinois is the Sons of Liberty, and they don't interact with anything we're doing.
Okay, then I
They
then
haven't
okay.
acknowledged the civil flag, and they haven't acknowledged the state commander's course. And the guy that I knew, his name was Brian Duzak, and he told me that he used to be the state commander of it, but he was replaced, and I haven't had any interactions with whoever his replacement was, so I haven't dealt with any of the Sons of Liberty for about, I don't know, probably 4 years now.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know because, like I said, I am interested, but I want to make sure that it's a legitimate militia and not some, like you said, just a bunch of people making claims that when push comes to shove, we're just not going to be able to do any good anyways.
Well, that's where the oath of office becomes important again,
Right.
because we're the first group that's presented the oath of office to anybody, because nobody else, they say, why do we need an oath of office? Like, there's a guy that says he's the state commander for Ohio. I asked him, would you be interested in the state commander's course and doing an oath? And he said, I don't need to do an oath. I swore one as a Marine. But, well, I swore an oath as a Marine too. But this is a different process because basically when you enter the Marine Corps, you swear your loyalty to the United Nations in front of the fringe flag unknowingly. And then you get sent overseas to fight foreign wars for the central bankers. But this is different because this is a personal integrity-based oath. And the reason we do it is to show the true law and avoid the misdirections that are being presented out there.
Right. Right. Because when you take your oath as a member of the military, you're swearing allegiance to the government and to the Constitution, but to the government itself.
That's right.
Well, we believe that we're swearing an oath to the Constitution, but we're swearing an oath to the fringe flag, which represents the United Nations policy under a corporation, which is owned by foreign banking interests.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Because we're not at war, and war hasn't been declared publicly. I haven't heard about it.
We haven't declared a war for many eons.
Nobody's invading us.
Mm-hmm.
So if we straighten out the misdirections with the oath of office, because when public officials, like in my county, I'm dealing with the custodian of records, the sheriff, and a lot of people don't realize that the county sheriff now has dual roles. They are the county sheriff, the justice of the peace, sometimes the county marshal, and also the public administrator and the coroner. And the only person that can arrest the sheriff is the coroner, and the public administrator oversees the estates of the dead without heirs. So in my county, I began looking into this because the custodian of records hasn't been keeping accurate records, and all the criminal complaints I filed did not show up in a FOIA request that I did on all the documents I filed in Nevada County. And it turned out that the custodian of records doesn't have an oath of office on file, and the sheriff knows about it and says she doesn't need one. She's my assistant. But what's important about that is that in Nevada County, my county has 89,000 people. 80% of the residents are senior citizens, and 10 to 12% of those residents do not have heirs to their estates. So that's a lot of money going through the public administrator's hands, and the custodian of records, who is not keeping accurate records, does not have an oath of office on file, but a bond. And the bond is only for criminal malfeasance in office. It has nothing to do with following the law. The bonds cover policy in admiralty. So I've been trying to expose that publicly because the custodian of records should be bound by oath, as is every other employee of the government. First, we talked about this earlier, if you Google 1-stat-23, that goes into the oath of office as a congressional act under Washington. That was one of the very first things Congress did, was establish the oath of office for everybody in a public office.
So much information here today. Wow. Thank you. Amazing.
So imagine, have you guys ever heard of the CAFR accounts?
No.
county, state, municipal government maintains a CAFR account, and that's the second set of books, and it's called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports. And so when you go to the county and they say, "Oh, we're broke, we don't have any money, we got this huge deficit," well, that's what they want the public to believe, because that's the budget that they've given the county out of the CAFR account, because the CAFR accounts go to the IRS, which is an offshore trust for a foreign corporation. So basically, that's how they're skimming the profits off the land.
Yeah, I actually have heard that, because here in Illinois, we're supposedly, I don't even know how many millions in debt, but yet they still have the money to pay for come up. I know we do our fuel tax every 3 months, and we get money, either we have to pay money in, or we get money in return. And they tried to say that, oh, we don't have the money because, the state is broke and we haven't put our budget through yet. But yet all of a sudden, they started sending out the checks again. Well, the money came from somewhere, and I'm sure that's where it came from.
Yeah. If you talk to your county, I talked to my county clerk, because in Nevada County, the fiscal year started in July, and I've been doing a series of grand jury reports in my county and across California, which have been being subverted by the local officials. And I've documented it, and I've presented it to the FBI, and I've spoken to it about them when they've come to talk to me in person. And they tell me, well, we don't investigate that type of public corruption anymore, which investigating public corruption is their primary duty.
Yeah, that's their job. But thank goodness we have an oversight committee that is willing to dig into these things and to further expose all this stuff. So maybe the people to talk to about all this is Jason Shavitz and Trey Gowdy. Maybe that's who we should actually be talking to.
Maybe. We'll have to see what happens, because if they prosecute Hillary and then go after Obama and we start seeing change, then I'll believe that they're legitimate.
I absolutely believe they're legitimate. I've watched them so many times just rip into people, and I honestly believe that those two guys, period, I think those two men, Jason Shavitz and Trey Gowdy, are the two most upstanding, respectable men that we have in our government.
Well, what I see happening in the movements, everything is a cycle, and history always repeats itself. And the reason why is because we're under international law and policy under the bar attorneys. So if we don't remove ourselves from this process and expose that, what's going to happen is that the government will keep giving in a little at a time until the people acquiesce and lose interest in it, and then it'll go back to business as usual. And that's why, even though we have legitimate people up there, until they reach a certain point and recognize certain things like the fringe on the flag and international law on the land, we're never going to have true change that lasts, because we haven't broken the cycle that's harming us.
Yeah. And we're not going to get anywhere unless this truth comes out, because people don't realize it. I mean, they trust, like I said, they trust the government. They trust that the government has our best interest at heart, when truly they don't.
Right. They have their interests at heart, which is money and power.
That's right. And power. Yep.
And power. Yeah. But first, the money.
So when the county officials are, if Trey Gowdy and the legislatures in Congress passed a law that master crimes policies are invalid, and that each elected official in the key positions must maintain their own bond and liability policy as recourse for the people, then we'll have personal liability restored on the individuals, and we can enforce the contracts, because right now it's really hard to enforce removing anybody from office for fraud, and it's really hard to get any change at the local level. I read the legislative goals of my county board, and basically their legislative goals for 2014 and 15 was to implement Obamacare and then pass the burden onto the county through all the people and raise taxes. What I found is that a federal program will be initiated for 4 to 6 years, and they'll fund it, and then the burden to carry it on will be passed meetings, nothing ever changes. And the county board says, yeah, we hear you, but then they don't do anything.
Right. All according to plan. I think that's the way they plan it. You know, they keep the elections. A lot of the elections, you know, they put on off years for that reason.
Yeah. So I really think the best thing we can do is just keep continuing to share the oath of office. And I'm still, it's not on your wall anymore. I'm shocked about that.
Go figure. Well, if you guys can make sure that I get all the links that we talked about, Mike, if you can make sure that I get the link to your web page and all of your groups or whatever, so when I do upload this video to my YouTube channel, all of those links are in the description area below for the listeners.
Okay. Was that you? I got a friend request from
Yeah.
Lori Alexander. Is that you?
That's me. That's me. Yep.
Okay.
Did you accept without even looking? Aw.
Well, I figured that was you that I was talking to on the phone, so I did, yeah.
Naughty, naughty. Funny. Yeah, that was me. So, Damien, great. This was really, thank you so much for talking with us, Mike.
Yeah, that was really eye-opening, and I'm sure a lot of other people are going to think so too.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope that they go to citizensactionnetworks.com and check out all the information that's on there, because there's probably 100 different PDFs and documents that people can use to fight court cases that are facing injustices in the system. And there's no donation tab on the website or anything. It's just all freely shared information. We did try the donation tab like everybody else, but nobody ever donates anything, so everything's been self-funded all this time. And the website's still being updated. I set up a Doctrines of Law tab yesterday, and there's two doctrines of law that are important for people to know. One of them is the ultra vires doctrine and the Accardi doctrine. The ultra vires doctrine is when a corporation exceeds the authority of their charter in violation of the law, and the Accardi doctrine is when an agency must abide by its own rules and regulations. So there's about 30 to 40 different doctrines of law that'll be out on that tab in the next couple days as I get time to get them all straightened out.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm definitely going to dig into that website tonight for sure, and share it.
There's also the Citizens Rulebook PDF on there too, and that's about jury nullification and the power of the grand jury, because there's no judge over a grand jury. That's the misdirection, that when you go into court, you have a prosecutor, a judge, and a grand jury. You're supposed to. But if you're a pro se litigant, you're the prosecutor. And for an Article 3 court, there's no appeal from an Article 3 court of record. And a lot of people think there's no such thing as an Article 3 court, but there is. The reason there's no appeal from an Article 3 court of record is because you have a fully convened lawful common law grand jury in front of you.
Wow. Wow.
That's really
Amazing.
where we're going with all this, is to get people in front of the grand juries and to raise awareness on it. Because if we can get the federal grand juries to begin doing civil oversight again, then we can restore the lawful de jure government. Because the government is supposed to be here to serve the people's needs, not fleece the people for their own private interests.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't even know what jury nullification is, and I think that's really important for people to know, especially if you're going to be called in for jury duty.
Yeah. And there's one more tab I'd like to mention. If you go to the homepage, there's a bunch of documents.
I've got it up in front of me.
And it goes into corporate receivership law. And the reason that that's important is because the governors of each state are bar attorneys, and they're court-appointed receivers in the bankruptcy, and that's why they're the court-appointed receivers in the bankruptcy have authority to transfer wealth from the people to the interests of the foreign bankers and the people that own basically the contracts. Because like right now, people are starting to find out that California is trying to separate from the continental United dissolve the Union of the United States.
What tab was that on your homepage?
If you get on the homepage of citizensactionnetworks.com, on the left side, there's a series of documents listed, and it's the fourth one down. It's called Corporate Receivership Law. And it's just got the glossary on it because I can't post the whole book, and the whole set of books on this is $10,000, and I don't have $10,000 to throw at it right now. But as soon as I start finishing my cases, this is the next set of books on my list to buy.
I've included that in the chat and in the description box also, so the links are there.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've got it up on my screen right now, looking at it, and I will definitely share it on my wall, personal wall, and also the pages, the communities that I run too. So great.
And the lawsuit, if people want to check it out, you can find the lawsuit at peopleversusstates.mikrei.com.
People versus
PLEVSSTATES.mikrei.com. And it's also on the homepage of the website too. There's a link to it.
Okay, I've got that
Before I
too.
got into law, it goes into it on the About section of the lawsuit website. I was a CREA certified construction inspector that I was drug into court under false pretenses when some neighbors decided to use their friends in high places to harass me and threaten me because they wanted my land.
Mhm.
So that's what got me involved investigating the Lawful time, was being drug into court against my will for something I never did. We had some neighbors that came in our yard and took one of our dogs and beat it and threw it in front of a car and watched it get hit and killed. And then the Nevada County Sheriffs and Butte County Sheriffs both refused to take jurisdiction because they were acting together to mess with me for these neighbors. And they're all Freemasons involved together. But that's why I began studying law full time, and that's what led me to uncover all this fraud upon the people and the government. My original reason for going to school and training, I was in construction, but the rule of thumb in construction is that by age 40, you basically want to be bags off because you're getting old and things start to hurt. So I got into construction inspections with the idea of becoming a state multi-level inspector, because if you become a state multi-level inspector, you can go anywhere and get a job because you have more certifications than anybody else. And that led me to CREA, which is the California Real Estate Inspectors Association. And I went with them because they have the highest ethical standards in the industry. And so basically I became a forensic code inspector in a sense. And that led me to pro se and I learned how to become a pro se litigant. And I researched this stuff to teach people how to fight their own cases in court, because you're told, if you look up pro se, it's discredited by everybody, and you'll hear that a man who represents himself has a fool for a client. Well, that's true, because you've been declared civilly dead, so you're forced to hire an attorney to really know what it means when you read that or listen to that statement. A man who represents himself, pro se doesn't represent. Pro se presents because you're the beneficiary. The attorney is the misdirection representation because you're now a third-party fictional entity without standing. And then on the About section of the lawsuit website, it's got 1-Stat-23, the Act of Congress, the Oath of Office case law, and then it's got a case above it that's called Sambor versus Kelly. And what's important about that case is it says an affidavit not sworn to before a notary public is invalid. An affidavit cannot be sworn to by long-distance telephone, but it must be sworn to in the physical presence of the notary public. And that's why when you do an oath of office or any instrument or letter, it's important to have them notarized with the Durant form before you send them through the mail, because then you've created a lawful affidavit. And all the attorneys that are out there operating, a lot of them know about this stuff, and that's why they don't tell people about it. Because when you go into their fictional courts, they want everything to be based on hearsay so they can argue the facts. But if you create a lawful affidavit, you've established your facts on the record, and they can't rebut them because they're all operating under color of law.
Wow.
Exactly. Not under law, but under color of law.
Yeah. And there's a lot more information on the website too. There's some
Yeah, there's,
You have to study the law to understand it, and the reason that we study the ethics and standards that these guys are all held to is because then you know how to help them accountable to their own standards and ethics.
yeah, these 2 pages are filled with information. Thank you so much for the links. I'm definitely going to be looking at it.
Yeah, no problem. I just wish I had more help out there and more volunteers, because the idea with Citizens Action Network is to be a national organization to coordinate people in each state to show them how to be effective in their communities and show other people how to enforce their rights using the law.
I think generally people are beginning to wake up to the fact that they can assert their rights, and it helps them. You know, I think honestly that people are actually waking up to the fact that if you know your rights and you assert them, there's nothing they can do.
No, and I have another PDF that I don't know if it's on the website yet, but if it's not, I'll send it to you. And it goes into the beneficiaries that we talked about earlier, because when you swear an oath of office as a public servant, you become an incidental beneficiary of all rights. Under color of law, the de facto government has reversed that, where the incidental beneficiaries are the ones that have the rights. Because as a beneficiary, you're a third-party beneficiary to the contract to the Bill of Rights. And a lot of people don't realize how this stuff works. So when I hear sui juris and impropriety persona, those are both civil standings where you're still civilly dead in their Roman civil admiralty court, and the judge has jurisdiction over you. But as a pro se litigant, the judge is actually your trustee. He's there to adjudicate and administrate your matter. So you're using the federal court as a lower court for adjudication of your matter.
Right.
Wow. Interesting. Well, Mike, I need to run, but I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. And I'm definitely, like I said, I'm going to re-upload this video to my channel, so I'll make sure that a lot more people get to see it and get this information out there. And I'll also put all your links to your pages in the description area to make sure people have access to that. Keep up the good work. You are definitely making a difference.
Thanks. I'm starting to see it out there. I'm starting to see through it, because it's kind of like you see that movie Tron. You have to affect the system. So where Citizens Action Network's been very effective is when people contact me for help or issues, we're able to get involved in their case and give them enough information and straighten their paperwork process out. So when they go into court, they kick the crap out of the prosecutor, and they don't know what hit them. Because me locally, I've had so much effort put into clamping down on me that I can't file documents on my local courts. They investigate everything I do before they accept it, because they know I file commercial liens and I know how to hold them accountable and liable.
And you do it legally, you do it professionally. And like I said, there's so many entities out there. There's so many people out there that are doing this just unprofessionally and for their own personal gain, that you know, you can definitely see the difference when it comes to the two of you guys. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you. We can go ahead and conclude for today, and come back at a later date too, and you can go over even more of this information if you like.
Yeah, we would definitely love to have you back on, you know, and talk more about this, especially more about, you know, the judicial side of it and how people can, you know, take their own defense when they go into court. I think a lot of people would love to hear that.
Yep.
The biggest thing is, if you're labeled as a defendant and there's no injured party, you want to file a counter-plaintiff complaint on the record, because then the prosecutor has to prove their case before they can proceed.
Wow. Awesome, awesome.
There's a lot of little things we just need to raise awareness on.
Right, right.
Thanks
Well,
for
thank you,
having me,
man.
and I look forward to next time. And Damien, if you could you share the link to this for me so I could share it too?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'll send it to you right now. There you go.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Michael, for coming on and hope that a lot of people see this and realize that we're fighting a battle, and if we continue to fight this battle the right way, then one day we will succeed and be a free people again. And maybe what happened to Lavoie and what's happened to so many others won't happen anymore.
I hope not, because we're basically coming down to the battle between good and evil, and it's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about right versus wrong. Absolutely.
Yes. I think we really need to drop the whole partisan conflict, because that's not really where it lies.
Yeah, and the founding fathers were really opposed to political parties because they realized the division, that it was the government dividing the people against themselves, and a divided house cannot stand.
Absolutely, and that's why they keep us divided.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's been good talking to you guys. I got to go too, because I told my kids I'd take them to the zoo today, so I got to get on the road.
Yep. I know you got that thing to do, and I'm probably gonna put my kids out. I got a couple of dogs that probably need to go out. So.
So thanks, you guys. Thanks for having me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and this concludes today's show. We'll be back tomorrow probably for another great show. Thank you. Stand up to tyranny. We, the people, should take back what is rightfully ours and not allow the oppression to go on any longer than it has to. So with that, I'm out. Have a good day, and take care.